This shall be chopped up some way, somehow, and probably stuck on YouTube. So, hello YouTube. Welcome in. We're doing another one of the videos, and we are doing it live. You can see chat. The board Bubby has said meow with voice or text to speech. Blah 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 blah. Words. This is gonna be just as rambly, if not more, than the other ones. But we'll see what we get. Let's spin on the wheel of monsters. We have the Elemental Inferno. So, copy. And we're removing it from the list. Yeah. Okay. So, walking conflagrations of unimaginably hot fire, elemental infernos are harbingers of destruction and heedless chaos. More tactical than many elementals, the Infernal will set entire cities ablaze to confuse enemies. They are common and thus have a standard DC of their level, which is 11, for identification under Arcana and Nature. There is... they are huge. Elementals fire, pretty straightforward. Elementals don't have to breathe, so there's a little subtextual thing there. So they can, in theory, be immune to like inhaled stuff, but for the most part they're already immune to poison on average. So they have a perception of +20, dark vision and smoke vision, which I mentioned smoke vision in a video that, as of recording, has not yet released, but will be released tomorrow. They speak Pyrrhic, and they only have acrobatics as a skill, which is interesting for such a powerful creature. Strength of 6, dex of 6, con of 5, no bonuses to charisma or intelligence. Oh, excuse me. And a wisdom of +3. And they ignore the concealed condition, specifically only from smoke. They can't see through fire. Sometimes creatures can see through fire as well. But they don't, which I find interesting. They've got an AC of 31, a fortitude of 21, reflex of 23, and will of 19. So they don't have too huge a spread. They've only got a 4-point spread on their saves. So let's see. At 11, 7 is high and 5 is standard, so it doesn't have even a single high score. It's got straddling that in between moderate and high on 2, and then excuse me again, jeez, and then another moderate score for 5. But so no extremes, no highs even, just but a dual split on strength and dex. And its perception at 11 is 20, which is slightly below moderate. It was 20, right? Yeah. They have dark vision and smoke vision, so they have some special senses going on. They only have the one skill of acrobatics at +21, which is straight moderate. So they're very middle of the road so far. Now let's take a look again. 31, 21, 23, and 19 for defensives. So 31 is a high AC. So that's its first proper high value in anything. And then 21 is moderate on a save. 23 is just shy of high. 19's a little over low. So it's, again, got kind of middle of the road defenses as far as its saves go. And we have 210 hit points and explosion, which is right below it. Very common immunities for elementals: bleed, paralyzed, poison, and sleep. And then, of course, its own element of fire. They have weaknesses to cold and water. So if they get hit by a water effect, they will take an extra 10 damage. If they take cold damage, they will take an extra 15. And water doesn't necessarily have to deal damage. You can hit them with Rousing Splash and they will take 10 damage. Or you can dump a significant amount of water on them at certain, if the GM finds the amount reasonable. So, these ones, they're not swimming anywhere. They'll just take constant damage, basically, within reason. Technically, water itself doesn't have the water trait, but it's quite reasonable to have water to trigger water weakness. So explosion, fire effect. When the elemental inferno dies, it explodes, dealing 76 fire damage to each creature in a 10-foot emanation with DC 30 basic reflex save. And as a huge creature, that's going to span a diameter of approximately 35 feet. So it's sizable. And it has a 10-foot aura, again, diameter of 35 feet, that just constantly deals 76 fire with a basic reflex save that is lower because auras always have a lower save, pretty much. Psychedelia. Psychedelia has been redeemed, thank you. And so now you get to see me be all glowy as I speak. They have a speed of 70 feet. They are fast. They are fast, very fast. That's one of the highest. Couldn't set you on fire, but close enough. Thank you. So this is one of the fastest land speeds. I think there's like quicklings are maybe faster. But there's not many creatures with this fast of a land speed. Fly speed's sure. Like dragons fly really fast. But not land speeds. Something this fast is pretty rare. So its middle of the road and its defenses are pretty fine, given that it can basically retreat and make you waste 2 actions just to catch up with a single action of its own. So ranged fighting against this thing is probably going to be fairly important. Let's take a look at its hit points right quick. It had 210 of them. So it is sitting at in between moderate and high, which is pretty normal. You see that a lot where you've got the ranges on building creatures, and then you go actually look at a creature and it's not in any of the ranges specifically, it's in between them. And that usually has to do with them doing the math to find the creature's HP instead of just having the creature arbitrated into one of those fields. And even in doing the math, there's some level of arbitration because you decide what its base HP is and what its per level HP is. And then you add the con. And now and then, when you have a strange creature that is like really high in immunity or really weak, very commonly you actually adjust what level you treat the creature as when calculating its HP. But there's no hard rule on that. It's just something that you see happens now and then. And also things like regeneration, that's particularly powerful, can can cause lowered HP very often. So they have a tendril and a fire mote, so they can whip you hotly or toss a fireball, little fire blob. At plus 24 each, so reach of 15 feet or range increment of 60, which means that they max out at 6 times that, so 360 feet, I believe. And we're looking at not insignificant amounts of damage, so and they actually show a good thing here that I'll talk about. So the tendrils plus 24, let's see what to hit generally is. Oh, we can look at the weaknesses right quick. So it had a weakness of 15, which is slightly higher than the maximum suggested weakness to cold, but 10 settles right in the middle for these weaknesses against water. When it's a point or two, it's fine to round up to 15, but like I might have mentioned in another video, I think that using some of these stranger numbers would be fine. There's just this habit of snapping to increments of 5. Plus 24 is a high to hit, so we should probably expect high damage from the melee attack if it's not agile, which it isn't, and potentially slightly lower if there's a higher reach one, but it only has a single melee attack, so probably not adjusting there. And so high damage is average 28, so 2d12 plus 15 is 28, and moderate damage is 2d10 plus 12, 23. And it looks like we're looking at moderate damage, so that is straight out of fire, but we're also getting 3d8 persistent fire, which is a lot. That is very high. That's another average 13 damage. So we're looking at effectively 23 plus 13. So we're looking at extreme damage, actually. That is exactly the average for extreme damage. Now, persistent damage can be ended early, but generally speaking, you treat persistent damage as either 1.5 times or 2 times, depending on your point of view. The difference being, though, that the first hit with this is going to deal an average that is extreme damage. The second hit is only going to deal moderate damage, so that's what they're looking at here, probably. So, big first hit, but all continued hits after that are going to deal effectively less damage, because persistent damage does not stack. You're getting that 3d8, and it's not going to go up unless they critical you. So starts at extreme, drops to moderate. It's still not bad, because potentially that extreme damage is going to continue for several rounds. And then the ranged mote is just straight 2d10 plus 6 fire damage. And a primary calculation here is that it's just this right here, the melee damage minus strength bonus. And in building creatures, that is probably, let's see, that's 2d10 is 11 plus 6 is 16, so it's lower than low damage, but you often see ranged attacks doing that, especially if they're particularly high range. They will still have a core base off the melee damage and drop below low sometimes. Usually through some sort of sub-algorithmic process, like I mentioned here, where they're just taking the strength off the melee damage. But ranged attacks are a little weird sometimes. They just are. Normally they deal significantly lower damage at the trade-off for a great deal of range. So blue flames. When the elemental inferno scores a critical hit, its body surges with blue flames, increasing the damage of its intense heat and inferno leap by 3d6 until the start of its next turn. So this leads into our next ability here, and it leans into intense heat. So it deals an extra 3d6 after critical hitting with either of these abilities, which is pretty cool. I like that it intensifies briefly. Inferno Leap is a 2-action fire ability. The Elemental Inferno jumps horizontally and vertically with a maximum height and distance, each equal to its speed. That is insane. Its intense heat is suppressed until the end of the jump. Instead, at any point during the jump... Okay, that's not so bad. You're not, like, shooting through and frying people. Instead, at any point during the jump, flames explode from the elemental at a 30-foot emanation, dealing 12d6 fire damage to each creature within the area. DC 30 basic reflex save. And it can't do this again for 1d4 rounds. Okay, a little less insane. This is equivalent to a burst breath weapon with movement. So it's still pretty good. It's still really, really good. But this is sort of an amped version of like a Drake breath, sort of. It's going to cover a big area because this is a 30-foot emanation. So you're looking at 75-foot diameter. Which means if it blasts at the beginning of its leap, or at the midpoint, it's going to cover the entire range from where it started to where it ends. So this thing is incredibly destructive, which fits into its narrative. 12d6 fire damage sounds vaguely correct for... yeah, it's slightly lower, it's slightly lower than the suggested 12d6, but it's getting in some pretty massive movement there, as well as the choice of where to the... Oh wait, is it 12d6? It's right on the money. I looked at 12, level 12. So yeah, it's right on the money for where it's supposed to be for limited damage, and it's getting movement out of it. So this is pretty strong action compression, but there's no like lingering effect or additional like riders or persistent damage or anything that you'll often see in sort of fire abilities like this. So this is a highly mobile, high damage, high intensity creature. It does have a couple of weaknesses and mid-high HP, but both of those weaknesses are very accessible. So it's easy to like for it to do a lot of damage very quickly, and that seems to be its build style, is lots of damage everywhere very fast. And its 3d8 persistent damage isn't just a combat feature. I feel like it sets things on fire, and the easiest way to do that is to apply persistent fire damage to an object. And they're dealing 3d8, which is an average of 13 fire damage, which will overcome the hardness of most wood structures and objects. In fact, it will overcome the hardness of several stone materials. Let's look at material statistics. So like a wooden structure has a hardness of 10. So like buildings, it's going to overcome that hardness on average by 4. Or by 3, sorry, on average. And a stone structure, it'll be able to damage about half the time. And it's capable, though less likely, to damage iron or steel structures. So these things can melt steel beams. But they are primarily probably focused on burning wood, because wood likes to keep burning. But these things are incredibly dangerous and deadly, but they have some very glaring weaknesses that can help put them down faster. At 200 damage, or at 200 HP, it's gonna take a lot of damage from even the simplest cold spell. And what was it called? We used to have Ray of Frost, and now there's Frostbite, I think. So what I'm hearing is Rune is dead. I didn't say I was making you face an elemental inferno. I'm just analyzing the creature. But even a simple cold spell will deal a significant amount of damage, a little under 10% of the creature's HP. So probably like 7.4% or something like that, percent of its HP. Not including the actual spell's damage. And if you're in a sort of setting scenario where maybe there's a water tower or a dam that could be routed into the creature, you could do a significant amount of damage to it. Because as a GM, for example, I would say every round that it's submerged in water, it's taking water damage. So it would probably be like jumping around trying to get to the highest point to get away from the water. But outside of that, this creature is dangerous, it's fast, and it spreads quickly, and that is its shtick. It is what happens when fire catches and spreads quickly. It is just the living embodiment of that. So we're gonna move on to our next creature, and